All right, well, thank you everybody for joining today. My name's Sarah. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator here. I think everybody knows that, so that's great. We are super excited to have Burke join us today as one of our authors for this month. So thank you so much for reaching out so we could set this up. So Dr. Burke Wallace is a scholar practitioner who has spent more than 2 decades navigating the complexities of the education system. Since beginning his career in 2004, Dr. Wallace has served at nearly every level of the field, from classroom teacher to coach to site level and district level administrator. His experience extends to higher education, where he has served as an academic advisor, adjunct professor, and tenured track professor. Dr. Wallace's unique perspective on personal finance is fueled by his diverse academic background. He holds a PhD in leadership and an MBA alongside master's degrees in education and religion. This rare combination of leadership, business, and, I should have read this before,
Pedagogical
expertise allows him to bridge the gap between financial theory and lived reality of school life. You know when you read something in your brain, you're like, I got that, and then out loud, you don't got that? That's what just happened. So, Dr. Wallace is gonna share a bit about his book today, and then he does have some over here for sale if anybody would like to purchase a copy. And then, yeah, go right ahead.
Good. Thank you. That makes me sound so fancy.
It does.
Yeah. I'm just me. Well, thank you for being here. I was telling Sarah ahead of time, I've done one of these up at the Havre Public Library, so I'm a professor up at MSU Northern. I go up there during the week, you know that. But this is my first book, and when you write a book, they don't tell you that like the writing it is the first stage, and then the first trimester, if you will, and then second trimester is getting it published, and then third trimester is like promoting it and selling it and trying to at least sell enough copies that it pays for everything you paid to get it there. So this part's just as hard as writing it. So I figured I would talk a little bit about my process and then read a couple passages. But we're in a circle, right? Circles are very democratic or egalitarian. And so I hope that this is just a discussion. So share your experiences, ask questions, because the last time I did this up at the Havre Public Library, it was a small group like this, and we had great discussion. People sharing their opinions and getting clarification on things that I wasn't clear about. So this book, when I was in college, my dad gave me a book by Susie Orman. Has anyone ever heard of Susie Orman? Yeah. It was called The Young, Fabulous, and the Broke. And I talk about that in here a bit. The first chapter is sort of about my own journey a little bit up to where I am now. And I talk about how I was definitely young and I was definitely broke. I don't know how fabulous I was. But I read the book anyways, and that really got me hooked on personal finance as something to study and try to live my life around. Not like a theology or an ethic, but just really how can I, at this point in college, I knew that I sort of wanted to go into a career where I would help people, which in most, not always, but in a lot of cases, helping people doesn't always equate with big salaries. So, I was like, okay, how can I make the most out of whatever my path in life is? And so I actually started writing this back in 2015. I started in Google Docs, and the cool thing about Google Docs is you can like go in and see, when you started. And now it's not like I worked on this all the time. I would work on it, and then I wouldn't touch it for 9 months. And then I would go back, I'd get inspired because it could be the end of the school year, and I would write a couple pages, and then I would get lazy in the summer, and then school would start, and I wouldn't touch it again. And then I had kids, and so all these things. So, but this last year, it was mostly done, although 10 years, like a lot of the studies that I referred to and a lot of the statistics were completely outdated by the time I was actually ready to publish this thing. And so knowing that and having that experience, I actually, like when I talked about things, I tried to be really generic, because oftentimes I will pick up used personal finance books, or I check out all the personal finance books from the library, and a lot of times they have the numbers from whenever they were published, and a book gets old very quickly, especially in this informational age. And so I tried to leave those things out, and even with like statistics, I tried not to necessarily quote the year, but like recent studies said, instead of the specific 57%, I said a bit over 50%, just to make these things sort of more timely, if you will, because I'm not quoting a specific statistic from a specific year. But then I was mostly done. I was I finally want to get this out there. And then I got the job as the professor at the university. And so when you're a professor, part of moving towards tenure is that you can do research, you can do service, you can publish. And so for me, it was sort of like a 2-for-1, like, okay, let me finally get this thing out here, and I can count this towards my tenure, points, my tenure track, or whatever, that hopefully they like me long enough to keep me and that I'm doing good work for them. So that was really sort of what pushed me over the edge. And I was talking to Sarah before. This was done for a while, or mostly done anyways. Rough draft was done. Have any of you published anything? Yeah. Like books or articles or?
Chapters of books and
Chapters.
articles, and I'm working on a couple of books.
Research
Okay.
studies.
Research studies, yeah, in your last job?
I wrote a booklet on business English in China, in Pingyao, China.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the publishing is a whole nother beast, and that was sort of where I was stuck, and I didn't really know where to go. And as I was saying that, as I talked to people that had published, like, well, publishers don't want your book done. They want like just a chapter of the book to see your writing style. They want an idea. They want a theory. I basically had to write like a whole other mini book telling them what my book was going to be about that I'd already written. And so, maybe I should have known that ahead of time. But, when it came down to it, I was like, okay, so I just decided to self-publish. So this was an experience in this. I don't feel like I have a big ego, and so for me, this is not about becoming a best-selling author. For me, this, like everything I try to do in my life, is about helping people. And so I hope that the people that read this, as a fellow teacher or professor, that it helps them.
Sorry.
Welcome.
We're at a board meeting.
No, that's fine.
Hi, Robbie.
Hi.
Sarah, hi.
It's good to meet you. Oh, good.
So that was sort of my journey, and then I ended up getting it published. It came out in February, and so now, again, I'm trying to figure out how do I promote this. And it hasn't gone much beyond my own social media pages, which I'm not an influencer, so that means it's not gone very far. But I appreciate being here. The library, as I was saying, it should be a central hub of learning and of community in every community that has one. So I think it's great to have an activity at the library, but also supports me, and so that's what library and civic institutions should do, I think. So anyway, so I thought, so that's a little bit about it. I figured I would read a couple passages. One of the passages that pick, so this is designed, it says for educators, but as I was researching how do you promote it or whatever, they said that you really need a strong subtitle in your book so that as people are searching for things. So that's why it says a guide to budgeting debt and retirement on a teacher's salary. Now, I did not write this just for teachers. This is really for any educator, for people that work in education. A lot of it does deal with like having a pension, a lot of the retirement conversation. So that can even be school secretaries. That can be professors at maybe at public institutions that have a pension. But what I've talked about is I've sort of tried to market this to a wider audience. Is that really this is for anyone who's on a middle class salary, anyone who's trying to survive off of middle class income. So that is sort of where it's at. A couple of features, let's see. I put out there as I was doing this while I wasn't working on this while I was getting my dissertation, but because of my dissertation, I'm like, I want feedback from people. So of course I put out a survey, again on my social media, so not a very big reach, but I did have some people share it with their schools, and ask people just like some questions, educators' questions about regrets they have, or questions about their own budget, their income, things like that. And so throughout the book, I just have these little inserts here called Real Teacher Talk, which are quotes from actual teachers or educators, or a couple of them are from retired educators. And so I just wanted that to lend some more credibility. This is not just my idea, but that the things that these other people are saying, even though they didn't know what I was writing about, that it does weave in sort of that qualitative, where you're weaving in what people are saying to what was already in here. So, oh, and then I do these, let's see here. I also added some sections that I called extra credit, and this is sort of like the homework that I give people, like how they can actually apply something from the book to their lives. So this is, Susie Orman writes way better books than I do. Has way better reach, knows more about personal finance than I do, but really the niche of this is I wanted to make this in language that was relevant to educators. And so really throughout it, and in the sections I read, you'll see that a little bit, I really tried to pepper it with analogies because, and part of the reason I started wanting to write this a decade ago was I have found in my own experience that a lot of educators, and maybe this is true in other fields as well, I don't know, but a lot of educators feel like, oh, I'm getting a pension, so I don't have to worry about my retirement because I'll just, when I retire, the pension will be there and that's all I need to worry about. But in reality, to have a fulfilling, I shouldn't say fulfilling because you can have a fulfilling retirement in any way, but you know, for many people to have the retirement they want and to be able to do the things they want to do in retirement, you need more than your pension. And so I talk about, for those with a pension, public school educators, professors, etc. Does the library have pension as a public?
No?
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't made it that far in life.
Okay, yeah. And at the Havre Public Library, they did, because they were part of the county, they were county employees, so they were part of that county pension system. But, oh, so I talk about like for people with a pension, the retirement really should be a tricycle. So you have the pension, one wheel, you have Social Security, another wheel, and then you should have your personal savings or personal retirement funds as the third wheel. And so if you work all those together, then as a tricycle, you can have a smooth retirement. So I talk a bit about that, just because again, I worked with so many, starting out as a teacher and then moving to an administrator, so many people that, number one, were just trying to make ends meet with their salary, but then also were not thinking about the future because, oh, well, I have a pension, that's all I need to work. Which, I'm not saying anything bad about a pension, because truly to have a pension is amazing. So few people nowadays do. So I know that a lot more private companies used to have pensions than do so now. Okay. Shall we read? Or shall I read a section? Okay. There's not really pictures in this book, so I'm not going to be like a kindergarten teacher and show it to you. But. Okay, so this is a section about the 3 phases in retirement. And so this is something, and again, if my target audience really is anyone who's an educator, but specifically I want to catch people early on in their educational career where they can make some of these decisions. If you're early on in your career and you put away $50 a month, people don't realize how that's going to add up. And there's a section in here I talk about in my last school in Wisconsin. I used to talk about with personal finance with the students about for an 18-year-old, if you invest $100 a month, you're likely, now nothing's for sure, but you're likely to be a millionaire by the time you're 65. And so when I talk to my seniors in high school about $100 a month, a lot of them are like, I can probably find $100 a month to put into that. Or even my own son who's 16, when he got his first job, I told him that if he would put in a certain amount of money to his retirement account, that we would match it, just to get him started. And so he's 16 now, and he already has money set aside for that. And so even when he's 18 and I can't take care of him anymore like I do now, or can't control his money like I do now, I'm setting him up for at least to have a good road to go on, and it'll be his choice at that point. But I'm hope that he's seeing the benefit of that. So these are the 3 phases of retirement. I know some of you are retired anyways. So I'm interested to see what you all think of this. As you begin to envision what your future life could be like, remember that not every year in retirement will be the same. Is every school year identical for you? Do the classroom management techniques that work one year always work the next? Of course not. Retirement is similar. Consider the phases of life as a long-term financial curriculum map to guide your planning. So see how I'm weaving in some the educational jargon to help it be understandable to my target audience. Financial experts often recommend planning for a 30-year retirement. If you retire when you first qualify for your pension, which is usually sometime in your 50s, or when your pension age factor maxes out, which is usually sometime in your 60s, then you don't have to be a math teacher to realize a 30-year retirement puts you into your 80s or 90s. With the average lifespan in the US being in the late 70s, a 30-year retirement could very well be your reality. Planning for longevity is essential. Retirement can be broadly divided into 3 phases, which I like to think of as 3 distinct curricular cycles. The first phase is the go-go phase. Has anyone heard of this? The go-go, no? All right, well, it's new for you. The go-go phase. This phase, often called the golden years, usually begins right after retirement. Your health is still strong, you have energy, your mind is sharp, and you can enjoy a lot of activities with your newfound freedom. This is the first day of summer break feeling that lasts for years. When people imagine retirement, they often picture the go-go years. Activities. You may want to travel the world or visit family frequently. Have you dreamed of a cruise or an RV trip across the country? Do you want to volunteer your time or finally sleep in and spend a leisurely lunch, not worrying about the bell ushering you back to class? Spending. Spending is often high during this phase because you have more time and energy for enjoyable and often costly activities. Some retirees work part-time during the go-go phase just to stay active. As a retired educator, you may have opportunities to work as a substitute teacher, earning extra income while choosing your schedule, grade levels, and schools. Of course, many retired educators have no interest in returning to the school once they retire. There are many opportunities, but you make the most of your go-go years. It is essential to plan for these expenses. And so here I have one of these real teacher talks in here. I don't even know this person, so this was just someone shared the survey. Elaine, 15 years as an educator. She says, I intend to live a full retirement with plenty of travel and comfortable income. I contribute 15% of my income to retirement. Also, I intend to leave an inheritance to my children. So I just wanted to pepper these quotes in here as a real-world connection from a real educator, how it relates to that. So phase 1 is the go-go phase. Phase 2 is the slow-go phase. So the go-go and then the slow-go. Next comes the slow-go phase. In this stage, you're getting older and life begins to slow down. You must become more selective about how you spend your time because your body can no longer go-go all the time. Activities. This phase can still be very fulfilling if you're financially stable. You may focus on nurturing local relationships and taking advantage of community events. If you're fortunate enough to live near a university, it may offer a 50 and better program with activities and mentally enriching lectures. Otherwise, nearly every community provides social and physical opportunities designed for seniors. Spending. Spending typically declines during the slow-go years as you are less likely to take as many expensive international trips and instead find enjoyment in simpler, less physically demanding patterns of life.
Coming to book reviews.
Yeah, not too demanding, huh? Yeah, you don't have to travel to Sweden. They just got back from Sweden, that's why.
Nice.
You went, did you go too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then so finally, so if you start out, and again, I think about like a 20-year-old who's now a 24-year-old who's just entering the workforce and has never really thought about, oh, everyone just think, oh, retirement, it's just gonna all be, you know, whatever I want it to be. But I actually say in here, let's see. Oh, I'll read that then, never mind. Hold that thought. Okay, so you have the go-go years, the slow-go years, and finally comes the no-go years. Finally, if you are fortunate to live long enough, you'll reach the no-go phase. During this period, your pace slows even further and will be limited by your ability to be mobile. Most people take the ability to get around for granted, but as the body ages, that independence is no longer guaranteed. Mental decline may also occur during this phase, though take solace that you may not be fully aware of it. Activities. Social connections may diminish, and the ability to live independently will become a major consideration. Spending. Spending during this stage varies widely, but is largely focused on basic living expenses, and most importantly, healthcare. If you need to move into a retirement community or assisted living facility, costs can rise rapidly, making this phase especially expensive. Your no-go phase is absolutely not the time to run out of money. So that's all I wanted to read in this section, but then I do have an extra credit here after. The next section, which I won't read, is just about behavioral finance. This is in the second chapter. And so then I talk a bit about behavioral finance, because whether we know it or not, money is behavioral, right? How many of us, if we're upset, right, we want to, like, some people binge eat when they're upset, or some people binge shop or spend when they're upset. Some people don't want to think about retirement because they feel like their financial life is so out of control, or they're just trying to live day to day. And so there's actually a lot of, in the field of behavioral psychology, there's a lot of it that ties into finance and how people manage their money. But the extra credit I just want to read because it ties into those phases we just read about. I say, find an app or website that lets you upload a photo of yourself and conducts age progression on your photo. A recent study showed when people picture themselves in an elderly state, they are significantly more likely to save more for retirement. There was actually a study on this. Seeing those wrinkles and gray hair, or lack of hair in my case, will help you face the reality that your body is aging, and someday you will not be able to work. This simple exercise helps break through the present bias and connects you emotionally to your future self, making saving feel less like a sacrifice and more like an act of love for an older you.
Did they do a study on all the elementary kids for the 100th day of school? A lot of teachers age their kids to be 100 for the 100th day of school.
Yeah, that same principle, yeah. Yeah, and of course, again, 10 years ago when I wrote this, and that was part of my initial writing of this, I had a lot more hair and less wrinkles, and so now as I was like finishing this, I'm like, 10 years, yeah, it ages you.
Could relate to that.
Yeah, yeah. So, so what do you all think about that? And I'm not the one who came up with the go-go, the slow-go, and that's used in financial planning circles, but
I think that last segment is huge, because most people don't think that far out.
No.
I mean,
the no-go years.
no, and even
Yeah.
20s, 30s, 40s, your life is still way out there ahead of you.
Right. Or some people are like, I'm not going to live that long.
Oh,
But as I
never
said,
thought
like,
that.
you don't, I mean, that's why I said if you're lucky enough, right, to live, because what's the alternative? But that's not a time when you want to run out of money.
I don't think you realize when you're young how fast the years go by. How quickly,
Yeah.
things, happen.
As you get older,
Yeah.
boy, we go slower and time goes faster.
Yes, absolutely.
I think a lot of authors, speakers, advisors, maybe even in the past, sort of said to set a goal to have a certain percentage of your income when you retire.
Mm-hmm.
But I think over time, it's become more realistic that you're gonna spend almost as much in retirement as during your working years, and maybe less if you've paid off a mortgage or something, but a lot of your expenses, because you're gonna travel more, you may spend less on auto and less on clothes, but you're gonna travel more, and insurance and medical is gonna get more expensive, and you're gonna wanna do some things you didn't do while you were working. So I don't buy the idea that plan on having 50% of your pre-retirement income to live on.
Right. Yeah, and they used to say, I mean, I've heard closer to 80 nowadays, I think is what people say, because when you consider, depending on how you've set up your retirement accounts, right, whether it's taxed or not, but also they say things like, well, if you're contributing, let's say you're contributing 10% or more to your retirement, once you're retired, you don't do that. So that's automatically like 10% less that you're spending per se even. So that's how they sort of like backwards map down into what that percentages are. But you're right, that's sort of why I talked about the the go-go years, because if you're healthy, mentally and physically when you retire, that's what you dreamed about, is being able to not have to wake up to an alarm clock, or not have to be a slave to the lunch bell, or try to go to the bathroom in a 5-minute passing period, when the kids are asking questions. And all those things people need to consider about. But then also sometimes people think, oh, I'm just going to retire and then travel for the rest of my life. But eventually and this is actually having been at so many churches, with Ryan, that seeing people as they've aged and how they just sort of have slowed down, and even hearing firsthand, like, oh, we used to travel every year, but now it's getting harder and harder to do so. And so,
Long airplane rides are not fun.
it takes longer to recover from them. And
I also think that we are, to some extent, facing a crisis of immediacy. So I have a whole lot of seniors, and our demographic may be a little bit different. We currently have a pretty high demographic of student athletes, and so it may skew it a little bit, but I have plenty who come in as it's their final semester, and say, I'll be teaching business writing, trying to prepare them for their career that they're about to step out the door into, and they haven't even thought about it. They don't even know what they're gonna do after they graduate. They don't know what their plan is. So if they don't even know the planning for their financial future, the planning for a life that's decades out from that point.
Now,
It's
the
not
focus is
happening at
all on
all.
learning, which is what they're supposed to be doing, but not on what comes next.
Yeah, and so I'm seeing a real trend towards they're not even thinking about what's happening 10 years from now. It's hard to get them to think about what's happening 6 months from now, and that's going to be.
they just
real
want that
Yeah.
weekend party, because ChatGPT does their work, so then they can just party all the time.
You mentioned high
This is the
school.
first year that I heard of students graduating saying, I'm gonna take a gap year because they don't know what they want to do. But that wasn't an option. That wasn't even something that entered our minds. It was like, you automatically went to college, or you started an apprenticeship, or you did something towards your, end goal. But this year, this is the first time I've ever heard that term. I've heard of people taking a gap year in college
Yeah.
to go travel to Europe or do something, but not right after high school.
Well, the idea of the gap year I think it started in Great Britain, is the year
Europe,
between
yeah.
high school and college, especially for kids who aren't sure what they're going to do. And they go and find a job and discover what they like or may not like. And then they can, if they haven't figured out, that year will help them.
You had
do it.
mentioned talking to high school students. Our experience, I was in banking for my career, I'm retired now. Our experience was that the local schools, and I think much of the state, when I was with the Montana Bankers Association, they tried to get a system to get education into the school on financial matters, because our experience was kids that come clear through high school and have no financial education in school.
It's required now.
Yeah.
The state requires it now.
So over the last 10 years, as I was working on this, 10 years ago when I started, I don't think a single state required it. And now, I don't know if it's it might be over half of states require personal finance as a graduation requirement.
But
So, and Montana requires it, or just Great Falls Public Schools require it? Probably
I think
Montana,
it's
I would
Montana,
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah, they started in elementary, or in middle school here. One day when I was studying last fall, I was across the hall hearing the kids, and they were paying in beans or something.
when we would go in for a day, just an hour to teach high school students, juniors or seniors,
Yep.
most of them didn't know about credit cards, interest rates, credit scores, financing, and had not thought at all about retirement.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I worked as Sarah was reading, an academic advisor at University of California, Davis, which has like 20,000 students or something like that. And I was shocked my first fall there when it was back to school, because in the quad, where you can like sign up for clubs and sororities and fraternities, were all the banks offering credit cards to these 18-year-old college freshmen. Hey, sign up for this credit card and we'll give you a free Frisbee. Like $1 Frisbee, and they get this credit card. So, yeah, I get a high schooler not thinking about retirement, but they need to be thinking about credit because when they turn 18, someone will give them a credit card.
I think that was abusive, and I think my regulations scaled that.
Oh, have they? Okay. Yeah, this was back in 2009 when I was there, so. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a thing, and college students are coming out with loans, and, it's funny, all these things you're mentioning, I have them in here, so this makes me, you're validating me. That my book is covering some of the things that we think are important. But I'm not gonna read this chapter, but one of the last chapters in my book is teaching financial literacy, extending the lesson. So I do include in this book a whole chapter on suggestions, and a lot of it, I give them free resources to websites or sources out there. The Federal Reserve Bank, actually, when I first started this book 10 years ago, the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, I think, had like a little bit of information. Now, like the whole Federal Reserve System has this amazing program and curriculum, and they have partnered with the NFL. So like my son who loves sports, like he can actually play this NFL game on the computer, and it's teaching him personal finance ideas. So they've gotten a lot better, but there's like My Classroom Economy, which is maybe what you were referring to when you were subbing. There are ways, and this helps teachers learn how can you have like a store in your classroom where they have to do tickets, or beans or something. And then, I mean, that's even my kids that are at elementary school, they are learning that, like, oh, if I keep my 10 beans, then I get a bigger prize than if I give in my 2 beans right away. So that delayed gratification, all of those are teaching people personal finance skills, even if they don't know it. So I do have a section about that in here.
Did you talk about the stock market at all?
I talked about investing, yeah, and then the type of things to invest in, yeah. I do have, at the front, I do have my disclaimer that this is not financial advice, this is for informational purposes only. And,
I bet you don't have crypto in there.
no, I did not put crypto in here. Because my advice, again, this is very high level stuff, especially for someone who's a banker, but my advice is to invest in index funds, which is you invest like one fund, but it might have 100+ stocks in it, and so you're investing in all. And I share the story of what got me started in investing was my brother-in-law. He works in the biotech field, and he got hired at this company that was doing, again, this was 15 years ago or so, was doing biodiesel. And so they had some contracts with Department of Defense, with Qantas Airlines, and they were going to grow diesel using algae in warehouses that were dark, that didn't even need sun. So that was sort of their proprietary thing. And he was so excited about it. I care deeply about the earth, and I'm like, this is a good way to get invested. And so on the day it opened, I invested, it wasn't a lot, it was like a couple $100 that I put into this. And guess what I sold it for? 0. And eventually they went so bankrupt, got sold or whatever. So my brother-in-law did not get a Christmas present that year. But I share that as an example. And then the other stock I bought that first day of ever investing was Sprint. Remember the cell phone carrier? I guess they were telecommunications.
I still have for my email.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they got bought out at some point.
My email
But-
says from-
Okay.
Yeah, the first thing we learned in our investing class was don't invest more than you can afford to lose.
Yes. Well, I had learned that as well.
That's why I mentioned crypto. I think it's
Yeah.
just so speculative.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and now, I mean, the latest thing since this book is even published is there's, have you heard about the predictive markets? So, I mean, it's basically like betting and gambling, but now it's gone mainstream, and there are these online platforms where this was, the reason I heard about it was because someone in the military bet that we were going to do the strike against Venezuela. Someone who knew that and made like,
Insider information.
insider information, made like hundreds of thousands of dollars by betting, because anyone will bet, on anything.
It's so manipulated.
Yeah, and so now, so I've been reading more and more of these articles about like how 20-somethings, especially like the bro culture, the young guys that think they're invincible and can spend their money on whatever they want, are just like betting on everything.
And have the answer for everything.
Yep,
You gotta
So-
believe in yourself to do that.
that's gonna be a thing. Well, when
Yeah.
we have people in our government that are using insider information to bet and make themselves rich off of information, that's a whole, that's my next book maybe. Okay,
When you talk about behavioral stuff.
Mhm.
Do you talk about how people are to talk to themselves about what to spend and how to spend and on what, and what's the value of it? And, I mean, and people get real excited about something without really knowing what the value is.
I do a whole, what is this chapter? I do a whole chapter on budgeting, and I call it your financial formative assessment. So again, tying in the education. And so I have, like, I did some research, and I put like what percentages should be spent on what. So for example, most experts think that for housing, you should spend of your take-home pay, 25 to 35% of your take-home pay should be on housing. And then another 10 to 15 on transportation, 10 to 15 on food, 10 to 20 on debt, 10 to 20 on savings, 5 to 10 on entertainment and miscellaneous. So you see, I give like the room there, because if you're spending 35 on housing, then you can also spend 15 on transportation, 15 on food, 20 on, you'll get over 100%. So, but I do talk about that a little bit of like, if they're struggling with how can I make my budget work? Like they need to first get some baseline about how they're spending their money, what it's going towards. I do talk a lot about credit and like credit score. And one of the stories I tell in here was, I was a school administrator in California. I don't know if any of you heard about the Camp Fire. This was back in 2000, all the years run together. 2000, I don't know, whatever, 2000 something. But the Camp Fire, this was up in Northern California, and it just swept through this town and burned an entire town to the ground. And the school that I was working for, we served students up in that area. And I remember hearing stories of, as the government came in and was like trying to get these people some immediate financial relief, some of these people, because this was like rural, hill country, even in California, you have places like that. But some of these people didn't have like an establishment in a bank. And so they had no financial history, and they had to actually go and like open up an account at a bank, because they just lived off the grid. Their money, they got the money paid under the table or something of the sort, and they kept all their money not in a bank. And so they had to actually go and open up, because they didn't have any credit history. They had no credit experience or anything there. And so I talk about that story that we live, and I have friends that are like, oh, it's a cycle. This is a banker. You have to have a loan so that you can build your credit score, and then you have to have a good credit score so you can get a better deal on your loan, and so it's just like, and so some people are like, oh, it's a scam. I'm like, well, but you have to play the game if you live in our society and you're going to use money on the money market. So I just talk about ways that people can help their credit score as well, and what lowers that. Also, I talk about different types of debt, right? Good debt versus bad debt, like the school loan, and I clarify that a school loan can be good, but also can be bad. If you are taking out huge amounts of loan for, a degree that doesn't have a positive salary trajectory, or is something that maybe is going to be replaced by AI or something like that, like those are things you really need to consider. But, no one bats an eye that doctors take out $200,000 in school loans, because they know that they're going to eventually make that money back and be able to pay that. So we talk about different types of debt. So, okay, let me read one more section, but I'm happy to just keep talking. That's as much what I prefer. So this is a chapter on investing. How many of you remember the term, I'm sure you all heard it at some point, the order of operations, or PEMDAS? Does anyone remember what PEMDAS stands for? I'm quizzing you.
Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction.
Bingo, yeah. So that's what you teach, like, I don't know, upper elementary, middle schoolers. That's what you teach them? Yeah, because you work in elementary school, yeah, or you sub, yeah.
I've sub everywhere except preschool, but right now I've got a permanent sub or a long-term sub at Great Falls High.
Oh, what class, or what subject?
Resource 2.
Oh, okay. Good for you, there's a shortage of that for sure. So I talk this PEMDAS for investing, and so PEMDAS is it's an order of operations. It's what you teach kids, upper elementary, middle school kids, when they start to get into multi-step equations, and so it's a way to help them remember which of the steps they do first. And even now as an adult, every so often on like my social media feeds, I'll see those math equations and it's like, no one can figure out how to do this. All it is order of operations. It's you have to know which to do first, and then I'll read all these adults going through not knowing how to do order of operations and PEMDAS and getting the wrong answers there. So it's like that old show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?
Yeah.
Right? It's not like it's hard, it's just once you've left fifth grade, you don't remember it because your brain gets filled with everything else. Okay, I'll read a couple pages of this and then stop. PEMDAS for investing. Oh, who knows, what was the acronym for PEMDAS? Does anyone remember? I always used to remember it, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of like, or did any of you do something similar? Or is that's not a, that's a mnemonic device? Is that?
I just learned
No, it is.
PEMDAS,
Oh.
but I learned it as a teacher.
What about for the, like the planets? Do you remember?
My very excellent mother just served us 9 pickles.
Yep, something like that. And then they got rid of Pluto and then everyone had to come up with new ways to say it, yeah. So it's just a way, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, is that easy to remember saying that helps students understand the order of operations. Students cannot progress past a certain level of math without mastering this concept. Investing has an order of operations too. You have many ways to invest your money, but what is the best way for you to invest your limited funds? Think of your investment journey like a scope and sequence you carefully plan for your students. You would not throw a fifth grader straight into college level physics, right? You need to master the foundational units first. Investing works the same way. You need a clear, sequenced plan to ensure that your hard-earned dollars work as efficiently as possible. This sequence helps you capture the most significant financial benefits first, maximizing your return on effort, much like scaffolding a complex lesson to ensure student success. If you're a public school educator, you probably have money automatically deducted as part of a pension. Most workers, including private school educators, are not so lucky. For those of us in public education, the pension is one of the benefits we receive for choosing a life of public service in classrooms with too many student needs and too few resources. In most states, employees contribute a portion of their income to the pension, and in most cases, this is automatic. So let us focus on the types of investing you control. Your pension is dependable, non-negotiable benefit that provides a guaranteed level of income. Regardless of whether you have a pension or not, your goal should be to invest 20% of your gross income. So that's sort of the limit, that's the level that I recommend, is 20%. You have some people who recommend 10%, some people 25%, but I recommend 20%, which is aspirational for a lot of people to be able to do that. Yeah, it really is. Step 1, the employer match. First, if you receive a 403B, and I refer to a lot of 403Bs because those are usually what public school educators or private school educators have access to, whereas like you probably had a 401k, I imagine, at the bank. Yeah, so but 403Bs are typically what is available to public employees. But I also say or 401k or 457, but I talk a lot about the 403B in here. Investment, if you receive a 403B investment match from your employer, invest your money there up to the match. These accounts are set up through your employer, and someone in your human resources or benefits department can help you. Receiving a match for your 403B contribution is unlikely for public school educators because the school already puts money into your retirement through the pension system. If you work in a private K-12 school or a private university, you are more likely to have a match option. When your employer matches the money you put into your 403B account, that is essentially free money for you. To not contribute enough to get the employer match is like leaving an extra credit question blank on a test. Worse, it's like being offered a bonus point for simply writing your name on the paper and refusing to do so. For many private sector workers, the match is an automatic return on your investment. You put in $1 and your employer instantly gives you matching money. This is a positive investment gain before the market even moves. Studies show that anywhere from 1/4 to 1/3 of all workers do not contribute enough to capture their full employer match. Do not be one of them. And so again, that's mostly for those that are not working in the public. But yeah, you're gonna, if you put in, like my first job, I was at a private school, if I put in 6%, they would match 50% of that. So if I put in 6% of my very first paycheck as a 22-year-old, my first paycheck as a teacher, I should say, 23-year-old, they matched 3% of that. And I knew from my Susie Orman book, Young, Fabulous, and Broke, that I didn't want to leave that money out there. And so, yeah, it always surprises me that people, just because they don't know, or they, like, I always advise people that when they're signing up, if they get a match, automatically that first paycheck, put that money in there, because this way you don't get it and you don't know. Sometimes it's harder because if you get that first paycheck, you're like, I can't lose 6% on this paycheck, or 10%, or whatever it is. So, oh, and then I just gave in the book that example I just shared with you all. Okay, step 2 in the PEMDAS of investing is the Roth IRA. You know about the Roth? Yeah, I love the Roth. After hitting your 403B account match, which is step 1, your next move should be to contribute the maximum into your Roth individual retirement account, which is an IRA. While everyone's financial situation is unique, I generally recommend opening a Roth IRA rather than a traditional IRA. In a Roth account, the money goes in post-tax, but when you withdraw it after age 59 and a half, both contributions and earnings are tax-free. In a traditional IRA, as in the 403B, the money goes in pre-tax. You do not have to pay taxes on the money when it's deposited, but you pay taxes on the contribution and the earnings when you withdraw it in retirement. I fund my Roth IRA every year. True to their name, they are individual retirement accounts, so you'll need to open one through a low-cost brokerage. More on this later in the chapter. And then I go on, step 3 is health savings account, if people have that, and I talk about why that is a benefit. And then step 4 will be maxing out the 403B, but I also clarify on that I give some amounts, like if you're a teacher, and let's say in Montana, a starting teacher salary, I think with the STARS Act, is now $38,000. So that is the minimum that a school district can pay a brand new teacher. Well, to max out your 403B is $22,000. So, I mean, that's like 2/3 of your paycheck. So I just talk about sort of how for educators, if they're into personal finance or they read blogs of people that are doctors or engineers or people that just make a lot more money and talk about, I maxed out my 403B. I mean, I talk about how don't feel bad about that, because you just see very quickly that already if you're maxing out a Roth IRA and your HSA, you can't physically with your salary also then max out a 403B. Plus you're putting in a Social Security and a pension on top of that. So I talk about that. So I give the PEMDAS, the order of operations to invest, but I also try to make all my advice realistic and help them to really think about that, so that they don't just say, oh, well, the book said it, I'm going to go do it, without really thinking about why.
Yeah, and often you can start at 5% and increase it by increments as you feel comfortable doing that.
Or a lot of people, advice they'll recommend is, like, as you get a pay raise, put at least part of that pay raise into more to contribute to retirement, and that's a way that you don't have that lifestyle creep where you're like, oh, I got a big pay raise, so now I can buy more car, or buy, this or that, or whatever it is. But personal finance is personal, so it has to work for people. That's why I don't try to give a lot of hard, fast rules in my book. And especially, again, if I'm writing this towards educators who I'm assuming are educated themselves and have critical thinking skills, although I worry with the future generation and AI. And someone once told me, or asked me a question, they said, how does it make you feel knowing that every doctor coming through med school now is using AI to get through med school? And I was like, oh, not really something I want to think about. Although I can't think, it can be a great tool. Like even my dentist, I went to my dentist, and they took the x-rays, and then the AI was like, oh, this is cavity. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of cavities. But then the dentist was like, nope. So the dentist is still using his expertise and his knowledge to say no, but I appreciated that AI was like calling out things that seemed abnormal in that x-ray. I mean, I think how many times, like if you get a mammogram or you get an MRI or something, relying on human eyes to look through that, I think that AI could enhance a lot, like early detection of some of those things. And that's an aside, but I do worry, like if they're just using AI to pass their exams or to do these things, how are they going to have that No, but the same with teachers. This is what I tell my teachers at University of Montana Northern. When you get in the classroom, you probably will use AI to help you write lesson plans. Like that's a way to streamline what you do. But in this program, don't do it because you need to know how to write a good lesson plan. You need to know what should be in a lesson plan. You need to know what to do when the student's not getting it. And when you have a resource 2 student that's in your class, and you have an advanced student in your class, and you have an EL student in your class, you need to know all that because AI is not necessarily going to give you the right answer to that. But AI is great with just putting out a generic lesson plan to learn about Lewis and Clark. Perfect for that. So that's, I don't know how I got on that, but because we were talking about AI. So anyways, that was just a couple things. Hopefully gives you a little taste of the book. And again, there's so many. I mean, we could go upstairs and I've looked through them. There's tons of personal finance books up there that are great. But I really wanted something, I care about educators and I wanted something that would help them and that would be, like I read a lot of personal finance blogs and a lot of them frustrate me because they're just sort of written, again, with these like Bay Area tech bros in mind who are like, oh, I'm just gonna live off of 10% of my income because I make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and I'm gonna retire when I'm 30. And that's a very different lifestyle than someone who's gonna work most of their life. And I have a whole chapter where I talk about the educator side hustle and I talk about the jobs that I've done on top of working as an educator, you know, like most summers. And I was always an adjunct professor when I was K-12 teacher or administrator. I would adjunct in the evenings. But now that I'm a full professor, it's like, I don't want to adjunct too. So, yeah, but.
It's the reality. You have to have a side hustle for a lot of years.
Yeah.
So having created this one, what's the next one?
I actually do have another book that I've already started working on, but that's going to be a workbook for the classroom. It's alphabet graphic organizers. So it takes every capital letter. It's something to use in elementary school. It takes every capital letter, so it reinforces print awareness, which is for young kids, their understanding of what letters are. And then for each one, I've designed, like on the A, right? So in the A, they might write like the main topic of the story, or if they're learning about alligators, they might, you know, draw an alligator in the middle of the A, and then on one side of the A is the supporting fact, and the other side of the A is the supporting fact, and then below there would be like their thoughts or something. So it's basically it'll be a workbook that teachers can buy, and then they could use it like, oh, today, you know, and I break it down too by theme, and so it's like, oh, we're doing nonfiction, so let's see, and then maybe Z for zoom in, and so then they have to like really go deep into details for the older students. So yeah, but that one I think is I'm gonna try to get that through like a publishing house that does educational materials, because just seeing how this has gone with this, like if I do some workbook for educators and self-publish it, no one will ever see it. So that's sort of my plan. But then after that, I have no plans. Get my kids through high school.
Yeah.
So you're living in Great Falls and teaching in Havre?
Yep.
Is it-
I go up on Tuesdays and come back on Thursdays, so I'm there 2 nights. Yeah. And I'm here on the weekends and then of course in the summers and the break. So I will say as a professor, the schedule is much better than a K-12 educator. Yeah. I mean, I've already been off for 2-3 weeks and laugh at my kids every morning when they get up and have to go to school. Yeah.
Did you say laugh with or laugh at?
He said.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
just clarifying.
I like to tease them.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Thank you all so much for coming and being here. I appreciate not being alone. It makes me feel good. So I know this is a very niche book, and so it's hard to get wide audiences. And do you get a lot more people for like the fiction authors that come in, or it just depends on?
Yeah. Yeah, usually if it's a nice day, we don't get any, like.
So the winter's the time to do it? When people
Winters
get
are
out?
great, unless it's a bad winter.
Yes.
But it entirely depends. Most of the time it's the local, well-connected authors that bring out the most
People.
people, but,
Yeah.
yeah. we'll see. Well, on Thursday, we have a history talk. We're going to be talking about the Heart Mountain Japanese internment camps with Alan. He is one of the architects who designed the interpretive center that's now down there. So that'll be a very interesting conversation. And then on your chairs, you also have information about our June 6th event. This is with another author, Julian Brave Noisecat. We are bringing Julian in from Canada, and he is going to be talking about his book, We Survived the Night, which is a memoir about his life living as an Indigenous person in America, but like living with his white mom and then having to figure out who he was. So it's finding his culture and finding himself. And then in the evening, we're going to be showcasing his Academy Award nominated film, Sugarcane, which is about the Canadian residential schools. He will be present, obviously, for both events, so the Q&A sessions will be wonderful and informative. So come on out for that, put that on your calendar. Okay?
And
Tell
then
all your friends.
the Democracy TED Talk, so that'll be streaming
Yeah.
here.
So then the TED Talks, we will be streaming them from 9 a.m. until like 11, and then the second round is like 12:30 to 2:30. They'll be streaming right here in the room, and you guys can have some conversation about what you listened to or what you just heard. In the break, we'll have some food for you as well. So that's on the 13th of June. We were picked as one of the 50 library locations in the country to be the streaming locations for that. So they were trying to do one in every country, and I guess our application won. Yes.
One in every state?
Every state?
I think we're the only one in the state.
Okay.
I'm not sure how they made the decisions, but we are excited to be showing the TED Democracy Live with Visit Philadelphia. So that'll be great as well. There's lots happening around here all the time.
Yes,
So,
for sure.
yeah, thank you so much
Thank you.
for this. We will purchase a copy for the library.